What is going on, guys? Cal here, and today in this video I'm going to be showing you guys my settings for Krunker.io. And before I start, I just want to let you guys know that I am not a pro at this game. I'm just a barely above the average pub stomper, probably, if even that. And I play this game pretty casually and also for content creation purposes, obviously. But for some reason, I still get a lot of requests for my settings. What are your settings? On the daily basis. So one of the main reasons, or even the only reason I'm making this video, is just so whenever somebody asks what my settings are, I can just link them a video. Other than that, these settings are still pretty good for casual and even competitive play. I did make sure to optimize them so the game runs well and to my liking whenever I do play it. And also right now I am on an alt account because I'm not trying to get infected on my main, and this alt account is already infected, so I don't have to worry about that. But before I get into my settings, make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to my channel if you guys are new, and leave a comment on what you guys think. Also, share my video with your friends. All your support is greatly appreciated. But other than that, let's get right into it. So going down here with the settings. Starting off with the controls, I actually have all the controls on default. I did not change a single thing. Personally, the default ones work for me. I've learned to adapt to them. So if you want to run my controls, I did not change a single thing, so you don't have to change a single thing either. But going through the settings, my default region is Miami, but obviously that is whatever region you are defaulted to, so whatever city you're closest to. My language is English. There's only a couple of options here. I'm assuming most of you guys are going to be English also. For my performance settings, I have my resolution set to 1 because I want my game looking crisp. But 2 I think is just a little too extra. The difference isn't that big, so for me 1 is the perfect number here. Anything lower just kind of makes it look like shit. Anything higher, as I said, is just extra. For my frame cap, I don't have it capped, so I can have as much FPS as my computer allows. For my aspect ratio, I have it as my native, which is a 1920 by 1080. It is a 16 by 9 aspect ratio and is the default of my monitor. Low spec, basically what this does is it cuts off your legs in game, or enemy players' legs, so you get a little bit more FPS. Personally, I have a decent computer, so I don't have it turned on. I like to see the whole body and not make the game look really weird. Particles, that is a bit extra and can cause a bit of lag, so I do have that turned off. And then particle distance doesn't matter because I have particles turned off in the first place. My shadows, ambient shading, bullet trails, muzzle flash, all of that is turned off because it decreases FPS. It's just some extra pizzazz to the game, and if you have a godlike computer, maybe you can have those on. Personally, it's extra strain for my eyes and extra strain for FPS. Sniper flap, texture animations and object animations turned on, and the sniper flap is basically if you're running the sniper class and you have weapons showing, there's a little flap that just kind of moves around, has a smiley face on it. It's just for cosmetic purposes. I personally think it's fun and it doesn't affect me that much. I'm sure if you turned them off, you get a little bit more FPS maybe. So if you do want to maximize your performance, then you might want to turn all these off also. Screen shake effect, I have no idea what that is. I don't think I've ever experienced it, but personally I don't really like to experience extra shaking and stuff, so I do have that turned off. Next, for my interface settings, for my UI scale, I have it as 1. Basically going any lower makes text and stuff really small, and I just like to have mine as big as possible. It's just a personal preference. For show a UI, I obviously have that on. That's just like your health bar, the chat, the scoreboard, all that stuff. For the use old scoreboard option, I have that turned on. In the new update, they actually changed it where you can press tab to see the scoreboard and have the scoreboard hidden by default, but I personally don't like that. I like to see the scoreboard at all times to know where players are or where I am in the scoreboard, so I have this option turned on. Disable rarity animations, I have it turned off. I don't mind it on, so. Dynamic HP bars is where your HP bar changes as you lose and gain HP, and I think it's a nice little visual thing. It doesn't bother me that much, so I have it turned on. Hit indicators and damage indicators is basically whenever you hit someone, you get like a hit marker, and you get like how much damage you took off the player. And again, I also think that's a nice little visual. For some people it bothers them, but it doesn't really bother me, so I have both of those on. And also I have the color here for, when I do damage to them or whenever I get a headshot, which is a crit. So you can just change those colors to how you like. I think red and blue kind of contrast each other a little bit. For damage scale, I did make it a little bit smaller. I think the default is 1, but having it a bit smaller makes it a little bit less distracting while it's still there that I can see it. For chat box, I have it on. I like to see what people are saying. I'm not really offended easily, and I'm not really offended easily or anything, so I do have it on always. And then for the kill feed, you know, it shows who's been killed, and it's pretty useful. I do believe that everyone should have this one on. Next, for the counters, I have kill counter, death counter, and streak counter on. But personally, score counter is useless whenever you guys have a scoreboard that does the exact same thing. So that is the only counter I have checked off. For the rest of them, I find that they all have a purpose. You see how many kills you have, how many deaths you have, and on what kill streak you're on. Also, spectator counter if you have any spectators in like a scrim match. That could be useful to see, so have that on. For player messages and unboxings, which pops up in the chat box, I like to see what people are unboxing. You know, I'm a man of skins, so don't mind having that turned on. And same thing for player messages, as I explained earlier. I'm not offended easily. I like to see what people say. Ping and FPS, I do prefer to know what ping or what FPS I'm running. I know what I normally get, so if my performance is dipped lower or dipped higher, then I'll know that, oh, the new update change my performance in a good or a bad way, or if I'm lagging too much, then maybe it just means I have to hop off. But either way, I do think it's a really useful thing to know. For my movement speed, I don't really need to know that. I mean, I know if I'm going fast, and movements for me not really a number, it's more of just an in-game mechanic. So personally, I don't need to see that. I have that turned off, and the speed offset does not matter because I do have that turned off. And for showing medals, I do like to see what medals people have, so have that turned on also. And for the name tag display and style, I have it showing everything because I do like to see who I'm going up against and obviously how much health they have. I think that's very useful in a game. The only thing I do have turned off here is the name tag health number. Basically, whenever you turn this on, it shows you the numerical value of health that they have, and personally I don't think that matters. You can kind of just judge by where the health bar is, how low on HP they are. Next is my crosshair, and personally I run a circle crosshair style, and this is all personal preference, but this is mine right here. If you're wondering, I run a hollow circle, have it as a bluish color with a black shadow, full opacity, and it's always showing, literally always, so I have something in the middle of my screen to judge where I'm shooting at. And for the shadow thickness, I have it at 1, and for the crosshair thickness and size, I have it as 2. Basically, this is what it looks like in game. Nice little circle here that's not too distracting, but you do have something to judge, you know, wherever you're knifing or shooting at all times. Next, for the gameplay settings, sensitivity is definitely your own personal preference, so don't copy mine and expect to play like I do. Personally, I run an 800 DPI mouse, and these are my X and Y sensitivities and my aim X and Y sensitivities for this game. After testing for a good bit, I found that these numbers work well for me. For lag compensation, I do believe that this setting is actually getting removed, but personally I would always have it high, and especially for me, my Wi-Fi is not the best, so I lag sometimes, and lag comp can definitely help for like higher ping, like if you're playing on a different server than you normally do for like a scrim or a tournament. It could definitely help. However, I believe the devs are working on fixing servers and stuff right now, so sooner or later lag comp will be removed. I'm not really sure what scroll direction does, but by default it's turned off, so I have it turned off and it hasn't really bothered me. Invert y-axis, yeah, I don't really need that either. For challenge mode and streamer mode basically shuffles the name tags of the players, so if someone's name contains like an inappropriate word that you don't want your stream to see, then you can turn that on and it'll shuffle their name, and you won't be able to make out what word that is. And challenge mode, if you don't know what challenge mode is, basically your HP is halved, but you get 1.5 times the amount of KR, so you are more prone to die. But if you want that little bit of extra KR and you think you're a good player, then challenge mode might be worth taking on. I personally have like never done it. It's not worth it for me. I like my HP at full. For the controller settings, I just dragged all mine to the lowest value. I mean, it doesn't really matter because I don't use controller. I don't know anybody in this game who plays with controller, so I'm just gonna ignore that section. For audio, I have my master volume at really low. That's just because my PC volume is like pretty high in general, so I don't want the game to be blasting my ears out. And for ambient volume, gun volume, and player volume, I have that as default because the master volume is basically already changing all that whenever I have the master volume low. For the UI volume though, I don't think that's as useful because it's just like the sound that you make as you're scrolling through things, so I have that as a half. And for the voice volume, I don't want little kids to be ear raping me, so I have that at 0.1, and sometimes I turn it off, but again, I like to hear what people are saying, so as long as they're not ear raping me. Next, for my view model, I have the field of view and the weapon field of view on max, because I do prefer to see the maximum field of view. For weapon bobbing, I have it at 1, and weapon leaning, I have it on 1. For some people, it distracts them, but personally, I like it when it's kind of realistic. You know, when I'm moving, my weapon's not going to be completely still, so if it's moving a little bit, it's not too bad, and 1 is a decent value for me, I found. For weapon X and weapon Y offset, I have that as 2, and for these X, Y, and Z settings, you just imagine there's a X-axis, which is horizontal, a Y-axis, which is vertical, and a Z-axis that's coming in and out of your screen. And for the X-axis, I have my weapon to the farthest right that is possible, and the weapon Y-axis, I have it as far down as possible. And for the weapon Z offset, I have that as default. If you move it too close, then it's like you're shoving the barrel into your stomach, but if you move it too far, it's like you have 20-foot long arms. So I find that the default 1 value for the weapon Z offset works fine. For the weapon aim animation, I've tried without the animation before and it just feels weird, so I have the animation on. Hide weapon on ADS, basically what this does is whenever you're just like scoping in with any of your weapons or aiming down sight, which is what ADS stands for, it hides the weapon. And it does make it more clean to aim because you have nothing distracting you on your screen, so I definitely have that turned on. For showing your hands, basically whenever you're holding a knife, you have your little hand, but if you don't want to see that, then you can turn that off. I personally like to have it on because I don't like to just see a floating knife or a floating weapon. For showing my primary, honestly depends on my mood. Sometimes I like to see my skin, sometimes I don't. I said this before and I'll say it again, I am a skins person, so I do like to see my expensive skins sometimes, but other times I like to play more seriously and I have it turned off for a less distracting view, so it just depends on my mood. I change through this setting pretty often. However, for showing my secondary, I always have that turned off. They only recently added secondary skins, but I don't have any yet, so I don't have a reason to have that turned on. If I have it turned off, it's just less distracting whenever I'm using the secondary, less stuff on my screen. But for showing your melee weapon, I do have that turned on at all times. I like to see with a knife that I'm swinging around. Next, my editing settings, and for my HUD health high and HUD health low, I just have it as those colors. You can choose whatever colors you want. Same thing for the pop-up score color. I feel like most of these are default, but I'm not really sure what I changed. Honestly, blue is my favorite color, so I changed these two. For pop-up score shadow, I have that turned off. It's just a little bit of extra stuff. Probably not that big of a deal, but I don't really need to be seeing it, so I have it turned off. For the pop-up score scale, I don't like to have it too big, but I do like to see it, so 0.5. It's kind of a compromise there. For the offset, it's basically where on your screen you want it, an XY scale, and I think that's the default. I didn't really change it. It hasn't really bothered me. For the saturation, it basically changes the color of your game. If you can see in the background right here, it makes it a lot more bright, but the brighter it is, the less FPS you have, so I think the 1 value, it might be considered a little boring for some people, but it works for me and gives me decent FPS. And same for the UI here, you can change the saturation of the UI. 0 gives it a full black and white, and 3 makes it super bright. So I just have it as 1. I know a lot of people like 2. I think 2 is a pretty good one also, but currently both of my saturations are 1. And color hue kind of just changes the color of the game, makes it trippy. Personally, I haven't found one that I like more than the default. I'm just used to the default, so both of my color hues are on 0. For my vignette, I think this is kind of for like editing or people who make montages and stuff. I just have it on 0 though. I think it like adds like a dark border or something. I don't know. I don't really test it out. The chat opacity, I have mine on 0.7, so it's not super distracting. It's honestly not that different than 1. I personally find that having it a little bit opaque, you know, it helps. In the chat background opacity, I have mine at 0, so it's just a text that I have to read. And for the chat height, I don't have mine insanely high. You can see my chat box is doing right now. It's just like getting lower or higher. Mine is 2, so I can basically see the last like couple messages. The chat timer, I have mine at 0, but basically you can set it where the chat message just disappears after a certain amount of time, and it is in seconds, but yeah, mine is 0. For the kill feed limit, that's the amount of kills in your feed. I think 5 is a good number. You don't normally need to see more than 5. And the bullet tracer color, that one doesn't really matter. It's just the color of the bullet that comes out of your gun or coming towards you. I think a whitish color is best for that. Customization settings, load mod and auto load mod means that whatever mod you're using is automatically loaded in. You can only load 1 mod at a time, and it's the last mod that you loaded. I do have those turned on, so I don't have to go through and pick my mod every single time. Scope borders, I have that turned off because basically whenever you scope in, the surrounding is clear and you're basically more aware of your surrounding. It's super useful to have that turned off. My custom scope looks like this. It's a really simple one, personally not distracting, and it works for me. And if you guys want to use it, I will post a link in the description below. I do not have a custom hit marker or vertical image. My match end message is just GG, saying good game to the players. All these images, I know a lot of content creators like to have them customized with their own logos and stuff, but personally I couldn't be bothered, and I do not have a custom for any of these. Performance, obviously you want unlimited FPS if possible, so I have that checked on. And for streaming, currently I'm recording right now, so I have that checked on. And if you stream or record often, I would also have this checked on, but if you do not, then it's not useful for you, so check that off if you're just a normal player. But yeah, basically that is it. Those are my settings for Krunker, and if you want to copy my settings exactly, I have a downloadable text document that will be in the description below. All you have to do is click import and then paste all that and submit, and boom, you'll have my settings. But basically I just wanted to go through and explain all my settings, so kind of know my train of thought whenever I was picking these, and you kind of know what different settings are about. But that's gonna be it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you guys are new here, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, comment your thoughts and your questions and your concerns, and make sure to share my video with your friends. Thanks for watching, guys. My name is Cal, and I'll see you guys next time.